Ask the Podcast Coach for August 3rd, 2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music. That means, hey, it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there is the one, the only, Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be back. We're in August. Where did July go? Did you see it?
Yeah, it was like, see ya.
Holy cow. Yeah. That flew by so fast. It's crazy the summer months, like as we get into August. I don't know about you. We're looking forward to Podcast Movement here coming up in 2 weeks. Are we 2 weeks out? I think. Yeah, two weeks and some change, right? With the weekend.
I just record.
Oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I looked over and I'm like, oh,
you'll have to get the opener from YouTube. But yeah, it's funny how fast the summer goes, you know, with all that. And I think in podcasting too, the summer can be, and it's winter down south, right? And so it's kind of different, but those months, right, whatever those are, they can either be really productive or you can miss a lot of time on some of those things. And so I think you got to kind of track that a little bit and say, were there things I wanted to get done in the summer or the break or whatever you want to call it, right? And it may help to kind of write some of these things down and kind of check them off, you know, like, hey, here's some things I wanted to get done over this time because it can just disappear on you super fast. Yeah,
it's amazing how quick it goes. And I can now officially say I will be signing the contract tomorrow, but I've been working on this book and we've kind of been negotiating back and forth on who's doing what and what's doing that. And I do now own the official audio rights of the book, which is cool.
Nice.
The one thing I was like, can I keep that one? And they're like, okay, fine. So that means I now really have to, now I have a deadline to meet. So that'll be fun. But hey, it's August 3rd and we knew August 1st, no more Hangouts. So
it's gone. It is gone.
Yeah.
It's officially gone. I went out and checked it and it's no longer an option on the, when you go to schedule it, it's no longer there. You can't force it. You can't make it work. It's gone. Yeah. Hangouts are gone.
Yeah. Cause you got to test it, right? Didn't you do a Gallup thing?
I do. We did. No. So Thursday, let's see, hold on. Today's Saturday, right? So Thursday was the first. So I have Home Gadget Geeks on Thursday. And so Thursday, just before the show, I'm like, we're using StreamYard, so it's not such a big deal. Right. But Thursday for the show, I went out and tried to schedule one. And then I tried a whole bunch of can I go around some things? Did they really cut off every single path to it that I could find?
Right.
So I tried to schedule it different ways and it's gone. So Hangouts on air, let's be really, really clear. Hangouts on air that you can schedule to post into YouTube live, like you would do, like we would use for this. No longer a function. You can still continue to use StreamYard or OBS or forget that vMix. There we go. Yeah. All those services still work, and that's I think YouTube's direction is to continue to allow those streams to come in. That's what they want to host. If you go to youtube.com/webcam, you can see the replacement, and I think that's an WebRTC replacement for Hangouts. This will be interesting to see if those get functionality. Today it's a really basic version of a one camera streaming into YouTube, and you don't get a lot of options. Be interesting to see if they do much with that, but I think they were trying to get away from supporting the plugin in Chrome and move into WebRTC. So good move for them.
Yeah, should be fun. If you by chance are listening on Spreaker, we are not there. You need to come over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And we actually did get, I'm using it here. Somebody sent in a voicemail message, and those are always fun because it's always great to hear from people. So this is from Paul Perez, and let me see if all right, we might have to listen to part of this. Jim, I'm going to quiz you on this. So you need to listen.
I'll listen. Okay. All right. I'll pay attention.
Hello, Mr. Jackson. My name is Paul Perez. My podcast is the Improve and Have Fun podcast at improveandhavefun.com.
Jim, what is the name of his podcast?
Improvement, have fun. I don't
see. That's it.
Okay.
And that was my point is, and I'll play his whole question in a minute, because I think I do this too. It's one of those things where I don't know if it's just we know it so much, Or we have a whole like, well, I don't want to like brag about I don't want to be self-promotional or whatever, but it's like, well, Dave, what school do you do on Saturday, or what show? And I'm like, oh, it's a thing I do with Jim Collison. It's called Ask the Podcast Coach. It's like all of a sudden our podcast becomes one syllable. and I'm like, and I've seen people do this all the time. And I think that's part of it is we're really self-conscious about self-promoting. But if somebody asked me, I should say, oh, it's every Saturday. It's Ask the Podcast Coach. Like, over pronunciate it. Do you ever see it's like a 7-year-old smart child that's like doing like algebra and he over pronunciates all of his words and you just want to punch that kid in the face because you're like, oh, I know lots of words with big syllables. Well, we need to talk like a smart child when it comes to saying our podcast, because that's when I do the question at the end of the month. There are so many times that they don't leave their website address, even though no many times I can ask, and B, I can't understand what the name of your show is. I'm like, hey, this is Jim Smith from the podcast. And I'm like, what? And it's like, so keep that in mind when you're telling somebody about your show. Over pronunciate and slow down. All right, so let's go back. And I'm not picking on Paul. It just like I just said, we're all guilty of that, but just keep that in mind, because I don't think we realize we're doing that. So anyway, let's go back to Paul's question.
Hello, Mr. Jackson. My name is Paul Perez. My podcast is the Improve and Have Fun podcast at improveandhavefun.com. And I just had a question regarding trying to be on multiple channels. Now, I podcast and I have my website associated with the podcast. I do YouTube and I do Instagram as well. But of the three, of course, I get the most bites or the most downloads on through the podcast. But my question is, should I only focus on the podcast and not so much on YouTube or Instagram, since I don't get so much engagement there? Like kind of just like focusing on the one thing and just trying to get really good at the one thing? Or is it, in today's age, it's important to be on many platforms? So would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for everything that you do and all the help that you give so many of us. I'm a regular listener, and I've definitely implemented a lot of the stuff that you said on your podcast. Thanks for everything, Dave, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Paul. Jim, you do this, so I'm going to let you take first swing at this.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you have time for. So should you? Yes. Do you have time to do those? Okay. So in his case, his podcast is doing really well. The other channels, not so much. Does he want to spend the time? I mean, you got to cultivate those channels. If you're going to do it, you got to be in them. You got to find people. You got to follow them. You got to post interesting content. And Instagram's case, you have to make kind of different content that you make for other channels. I mean, Instagram's everyone's like, oh, let's take pictures. So we take pictures and they're like, oh, and here's an Instagram picture, right? And you turn your camera this way, right? And so it takes extra effort. If you have the time, does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. And it's just, you're going to burn an enormous amount of time getting that community up and running. So I hear this a lot from the podcasting community. Should I, and fill in the blank. Well, yeah. It's really, do you have time? That's, any of these can be a valuable. Twitter can, I said Twitter to somebody, to some Gen Z person the other day, like, you're still on Twitter?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, it's not that old.
Yeah. You're not on TikTok? Come on, Grandpa.
And I'm like,
Snapchat.
Well, Twitter's still big in some, I mean, there's still a lot of traffic for some genres, for some, groups. In tech in particular, there's still a lot going on out there on Twitter. So should I be on Twitter? Well, do I have time? If you're going to respond, I mean, I think, Dave, we said this before, but I think, don't spend a whole bunch of time creating a space and then not be there. Like, that just pisses people off. Like, that's either don't do it or go all the way in. But you need to budget time. I mean, I have times throughout the day, because this is my job. I have times throughout the day to check Facebook, to check Twitter, to check the channels that people communicate with us in. And I have to kind of budget that time out. But if you start stuff, you engage a whole bunch of people, they try to talk to you, and you don't come back for 3 weeks, well, that was a waste of time. Don't do it. So that would be my answer.
Yeah. I mean, why am I not on Pinterest? Because now I could easily upload an image. I use the social warfare plugin to do sharing, but and I've heard people say, oh, you can link to the image. And I did that for about 3 months years ago when Pinterest was like hotter than, whatever. And I just didn't get any traffic. And I just went, okay, I know this is only taking, 2 minutes, but I'm like, I started to play on Twitch for a while, and I would go over and do live streams to nobody. And I went, yeah, this is not right now, at least. It's like you said, what do you have the most time for? So, I made the mistake. You talk about don't go somewhere and then don't be there. I have a School of Podcasting Facebook page. Why? I don't know, because I ignore it on a regular basis. And every time I go over there, I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting people can reply to that. And I went over and somebody like left a message like, how much is your school? And it was like from June. And I was like, oh, oops. So yeah, that's
it's a time and a budget issue. And what do you want to commit to supporting? And once you start things, I started a Discord channel, and you can't really start those things and then ignore them, or they got to be open. I have a set of tabs on in a browser window that automatically open up when I open up any browser, and it ensures that and I keep those tabs open all the time. At work, I have Facebook open all day because it's my job. It's what I do. What I do, which is really bizarre, but to have a job that's so Facebook driven. But I run those tabs across so that I know I'm getting notifications, some of those things. I have to be careful, Dave, that I've turned off a lot of desktop notifications, because if I'm podcasting, and I do that a lot at work too, those toast notifications will just crush me in the middle of a podcast. And, so I've got to be careful to turn some of those off, and I'm checking them on a more regular basis. But I do the same thing at home. You just have to be careful. You have to kind of decide what you're going to commit to.
Yep. Eloquity says the same thing. You have to find the platform which gives you the most traction and focus on that social media. Yep. That's it. So wherever your audience is,
you can grow one though. Don't like, just because you go there and in the first 2 weeks, nothing's happening for you. You can't grow it. You got to work at like I think some people treat this like they walk into a crowded room. They're not going to talk to anybody, but they want to be people's friends. And you're like, oh, okay, you're going to have to reach out and shake some hands. Like, nobody's going to just come to you. I think we see this in the Facebook groups all the time. I started my podcast and I'm getting 15 downloads. And like, so, okay.
Congratulations. Okay. It's better than 14. Yeah.
You started it. What are you going to, you got to do some things to make it interesting. You give people a reason.
Well, if you take it back to farming, it takes a while to grow the crop. If you go back to human life, it takes 9 months to make a baby, and you're trying to make a podcast in 6 weeks. And I'm like, it just takes some I just and this is, boy, you know what? I'm going to say something that you will hear in the future in the School of Podcasting. I'm signed up for a free month at Skillshare, and I'm watching a thing on SEO by the guy that started SEO Moz. And at the end, he says, hey, just so you know, I just gave you boatloads of strategies and things to look at. He goes, it took him 2 years of working from 10 at night to 2 in the morning to build SEO. Well, like now it's like one of the SEO websites ever. And he goes, but it took him like 2 years to just get it to where it just started to like trickle, and it's just one of those things. Nobody wants to hear that. And I understand why, but it was just one of those where it's like, yeah.
In the promotion space. So at Gallup, we just launched this brand new book called It's the Manager. It's the #1 business book, best-selling in its first week of all time. So we broke records.
Right.
It's going to do 1 million copies. I mean, it's a big book. So big launch. We do all these things, all this talk about it in the social channels. And, we launched that back in the summer. And now when I talk to some of my customers, they're like, okay, what's next? Like, seriously? Like, that was just 6 weeks ago. Like, it's not even cold yet. Like, and so when you're dealing with listeners, if you want to be in this space, you have to, it's never one and done. You got to be constantly, once you create something, even if it's big, Dave, this, your mega episodes, right? Those take a lot of time, right?
Huge.
Guess what? That next Monday, same length of time to prepare for it. But then you had the week before, right? You don't get, it's like, I get to take a break. No, that next Monday is coming.
hit the ground running. Yeah, I'm so happy right now. I have 2 interviews in the can. I'm actually kind of like, all right, now it gives me time to look at other stuff and go to town and that whole 9 yards. So
still same length of time though. You don't get to
no,
rest.
no,
And so
no.
you got to
And
keep.
that's, I had a friend of mine that was a professional stand-up, and he said the hardest thing for him when he finally decided to quit, he goes, is everything I did. He goes, if I was watching TV, if I went to a restaurant, he goes, any place he goes, all I was doing was looking for what can I make funny out of this. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it was the longest time to turn that off. And we're kind of, I don't know about you, I am the same way. I'm always looking at stuff. Or the other day, where'd he go? He just had somebody in the chat room, I can't find that, it was way up there, said bring back Building a Better Dave. That is the show I do whenever I have something weird come across my mind. And so I might do an episode on this, but I'm probably not, because people are going to go like, what? And so that's when that one comes. And that my whole point of this, you ready for the weird idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We always say things like, oh, don't, you can't say that in front of the kids. Like, don't say the S word in front of the kids. And I'm not saying that's right. I just think it's odd that, let's say that kid is 5. In 13 years from now, if you say the S word in front of that kid, nobody says a thing. And I'm like, if cuss words are damaging to children, like literally, like, don't know, you will, I know, like, why? Like, what happened in 13 years that suddenly they're not damaging? So now, is that an episode? I don't know. It's just one of those things I'm like, I find it odd in that it's almost like a George Carlin-esque. I don't want to compare. Wait, let's take that back, because I'm nowhere near the brain of George Carlin, but it's just one of those things I just kind of go, So yeah, so that show happens whenever I have something that I go, or I might talk about whatever. But yeah, so that show's on there. But anyway, so let's see here. We're talking about podcast movement in the chat room. Yeah. Kyle Bundle. Yeah, I know good old Kyle Bundle. Kyle Bondo. How can you mess up Bondo? It's the best last name ever. He's going to Podfest this year, but not Podcast Movement. We probably should do the Podcast Movement primer. And it's kind of one of those things we do every year. And it dawned on me why we do that every year, because every year there's more people going.
Yeah.
And so, Jim, let's do this. You give one tip, I'll give one tip, and we'll see who runs out the first.
Comfy shoes for sure.
Comfy shoes. Chapstick. Chapstick is a must.
This year, it sounds like, so I was listening to New Media Show, and Dan was on there talking about where they're at in the hotel. And it sounds like food's going to be available, but I'm probably going to pack some serious snacks. So I'll have snacks in the backpack for every day.
Yeah. Breath mints is another good one
for sure. Yeah. Just get those little plastic packs of them and throw them in your backpack.
Yeah. It's always kind of a bummer, because you're walking around and, as you like walk down the hall, it's
true. No, that's true.
But it's worth it. Trust me. The people you're talking to will thank you later.
Yeah. And I've said it twice already, but backpack, a comfortable backpack. Yeah. You don't want to be carrying things. You want to throw it on your back and go.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I used to have before. I had some sort of laptop case, and I've ditched that for a backpack. Water, drink lots and lots of water, because you're going to be talking literally nonstop. I will be talking, but you've heard me. Every year I come back and I sound like Barry White, because I talk from about 8 a.m. till about 3 a.m. So that's always fun. Any other ones?
So you're going to have a lanyard. Well, if you're a podcaster, have cards and stickers and some of those kinds of things. I'm not sure Podcast Movement is the place you come to advertise your podcast so much. I mean, there are podcasters there, but they're all trying to advertise their podcast, but still not a bad place to share some of those. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you. I'll probably be hanging out with you quite a bit this Podcast Movement, but some of those kinds of things, swag to give away.
Yeah. You know what? We'll come back to that one in a minute. I'm going to cheat and use the chat room. Daniel says hand sanitizer. And here's why, because everybody is germy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But if you want to stay some people are not. They've picked up something on the plane, And
it's just humans. It's just humans.
Yeah. And you're going to be shaking a lot of hands. So
yeah.
Let's Jim, any other ones? Otherwise, you can cheat and go to the chat room.
No. One thing is really watch your sleep. Like it is like, yes, you can sleep on the plane on the way home. Yes, that is a strategy, but it is, and I say this lightly because you're only there. You only get to see these people once a year in most cases. And so maximize the time that you have. I would, I guess, let me rephrase this. I would prioritize time with people over doing things. Like,
yes,
don't podcast. Like, don't burn a bunch of time podcasting from Podcast Movement. Spend time with people. We used to do this all the time, and you'd spend an afternoon trying to get a podcast together, and then, we got to edit it, and then we got to get it posted, and then we got to let everybody know. And you're like, this is a time with people. Make sure you spend it.
Yeah, and keeping with the sleep thing, or just what you were saying, if you're having go through this would be my tip. Go through the schedule and circle the sessions you want to attend if that's what you're there for. But if you're in the middle of a really good conversation and your session starts, if you have the virtual ticket, stay with the conversation, because you can always watch the sessions later, even though you won't. I don't know about you. I keep trying. Like, I started to watch the stuff from Podfest, and I made it through one and was like, that's it. So, but that would be my guess. First things first, pick out what sessions you want to go to so that you don't miss them. But if you're in the middle of a really good conversation, skip the session and stick with
and do that the weekend before. Pick out your sessions the weekend before. I think they're all available, right? You can go out there and do they have an app out yet? I haven't looked.
I'm with you. I haven't looked.
Well, this would be a good weekend, by the way. This weekend or next would be good weekends to do some research kind of before you get there. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Get a map of the facility if you can find it. Those kinds of things to kind of plan and prepare and to know how you're getting from the airport to the hotel. I haven't figured that out yet, how that's going to happen and some of those kinds of things.
It's called Uber. That's so know the name of your hotel is what
shuttle.
You need to know.
Sometimes there's a shuttle. It's just good to know, right? There may be a shuttle available for you.
Chris has a great tip here. Chris Nessie, open mind and a growth mindset. Yeah. And that's the other thing I guess I would say. I've seen that a lot. How do I go to an event if I'm an introvert? And let's go with that lovely saying, what's the worst thing that could happen? Because all you have to do is walk up to somebody and say, so what brings you to the show?
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you have to say. And they'll go, oh, well, I do a podcast about brand muffins. It's the Brand Muffin Podcast. Find it at muffincast.com. How about you? And you go, oh, well, I do the, Pygmy Pony Racing podcast, whatever, and off you go. And you'll know about halfway through the sentences if you want to continue to talk. And if you go, yep, this isn't really much for me, you go, hey, great. It was great meeting you. Have a great show. And they'll go, great. And because they know that you don't connect either. There's nothing really here. But the cool thing is later, if somebody says, oh, I was really hoping to find I do a podcast about Pop-Tarts. I was really hoping to find somebody that does a show about, brand muffins. You're like, oh, you need to go talk to John. He's over there in the corner in the blue shirt. So don't be afraid to talk to people.
I'd love a podcast about Pop-Tarts. I was in the vending machine just Friday, and I was like, I need a little snack. They had Pop-Tarts, and they're $1. And I'm like, yes, I would love a Pop-Tart podcast. Dave, I also don't think, introvert question. I don't think you have to talk to everybody, by the way, at a conference. Like, I know you go and there's people, and that's what we're saying. Now, you and I are both extroverted. So we have no problems with that, right? I think you could go to a conference, have a few people that you talk to, go to the sessions, take great notes. I don't think you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone to meet people if you're introverted. So
I need to correct you on that though.
Okay.
I look extroverted.
Oh,
I am not. The weirdest thing ever last year, Philadelphia, we're there, and it's the night of the Hall of Fame thing. So I'm all decked out. I'm in my suit. And I remember I went up the escalator and I looked up, and normally for me, it's like summer camp. I will see somebody that I know. And I looked up and I didn't recognize a single person. And it was just a sea of people in front of me. And I could just feel myself going back into my shell. And I was like, and in my head, I'm like, just go up and ask somebody. So what brings you to the show? Like, I'm hearing my own advice. And I did. The other thing you might do, here's a tip, and I wish I could give credit. It might've been Michael O'Neill. If there's a circle of people, and usually there is, look for the person look at their feet and look at somebody who's not completely like dedicated to the circle. They're kind of like half pointing out, and stand next to that person, because that person will more than likely expand the circle to include you in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try that this year. If I get into that place, and I'll be like, So, but yeah, there are times when I can get, very, my ex-wife used to laugh at that. She's like, are you turning into Shy Dave? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, she dragged me to an event for her job or whatever. And she's like, where is outgoing fun Dave? And I'm like, not here right now. Sorry. So I understand when people are like, yeah, I'm not really sure about it. And it's just, you just got to do it. You just can.
But it's also okay. I guess let me say this. It's also okay not to. And if you come to the conference, you don't have to be an extrovert. Like, you can they have lots of things available for you. You can, like I said, go to the session, sit in the back, sit in the front, sit wherever you want.
Oh yeah.
Do whatever you want. Like, it doesn't require massive networking to come to Podcast Movement. You can do it. Just do your thing.
Yeah, you can absolutely. You can still go to Podcast Movement, attend all the sessions, and not talk to anybody, and come out with a huge amount of value. Totally. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah. But I will say, I've gone to events and I get home and I'm like, you know what? I had that thing. I should have talked to that person.
Totally.
But Daniel says, never ask a creative person what's the worst thing that can happen, because they can come up with very convincing answers.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I think, Dave, anything else when we think about tips for conference going? I've done a ton of them. I will, you and I will both be there, and we'd love to meet you if you're Ask the Podcast Coach. Listen, I'm just trying to enunciate that. I'm practicing. If you're an Ask the Podcast Coach listener, we'd love to meet you, by the way. So most of you are podcasters, so you know the deal. But we'd love, don't be shy. Come up and introduce yourselves. And you all know Dave, but everybody never come talk to me. Dave gets all the love. I'd like a little love.
Well, the thing I thought that was interesting is Emily Prokop. We know Emily from The Story Behind. She said the first time she met me at Podfest or Podcast Movement, she was in an elevator with me and was too nervous to say hi. And I was like, you are kidding me. She's like, no. She's like, I was like, oh my God. She goes, I looked down, I saw your thing. And it's like, that's Dave Jackson. So please don't do that. Just don't
do that. Just please don't do that.
Yeah. Just go, Dave, great to meet you. I'm so-and-so from such and such. And I would love to meet you. Speaking of so-and-so from such and such, I should mention that Thursday night, I had dinner with Arnie Chapman from thefootballhistorydude.com. He was in town for the Hall of Fame, the whole football thing. Here's the cool thing. Because of my podcast, Arnie applied for a press pass and got one. I mean, how cool was that? And so he went in yesterday. I got a text from him, and he's like, hey, wish me luck. I'm going into the press room. And so the cool thing about it is, and I said, dude, I want a recording of this because of my podcast story. He said, yeah, you have and I have no idea who got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Some big football dudes that were very, very successful. But all the old timers come back because they missed their, because there's somebody there. You know what I mean? It's like you're at the grocery store. You're like, whatever, Terry Bradshaw, who? But when you go to the Hall of Fame thing, there's a whole bunch of people like, oh my gosh, it's Terry Bradshaw. It's Fran Tarkington. Holy cow. So he gets to interview all the old timers who don't maybe have as much buzz as they used to. And I said, dude, that's awesome. So he said, yeah, I even get to go into the side door. It's like a press pass. So Thank you, Arnie, for, and of course I took him to Luigi's Pizza, which it was hilarious because there was somebody in line that was there from out of town, and their friend said, oh, well, I had to bring you to everybody from out of town. You have to go to Luigi's. So
how far is Luigi's from where you're at?
10, 15 minutes, if that. He was in, he which you should do. He didn't stay in Canton because, as you might imagine, supply and demand, all the hotels in Canton, at this point in time, hugely expensive.
Yeah, so and Canton's not that big to begin with.
No. And so he stayed maybe 15 minutes away, right, if that, and much, much better things. Oh, speaking of that, here's a fun story. You love technology, Jim.
I do.
I'm on my way. I am renting a new iPhone because my other one was the battery was starting to get a little weird on it. And they emailed me and said, hey, you know what? We're able to take your money if you want to give it to us, which is basically what they say when they go, you're available for an upgrade. I'm like,
yes.
Really? Because it still cost me money. On the way to the hotel to pick up Arnie, my new phone went out of service and they transferred it back to my old phone. So I'm in the middle of looking at Waze and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, you're roaming. And I'm like, why am I roaming? And then I tried to like, I get in, none of my texts, like I'm telling Arnie, I'm like, hey, I'm stuck in traffic. I'll be there in a minute. And I've never heard of anybody doing that. Now Verizon was really cool. Like I got to Arnie's hotel and I'm like, can I use your phone? Cause apparently mine is dead. And I went to a couple of things and they're like, you are roaming. You can click here to buy a number. And I'm like, so I was able to,
so it had activated and then
Yeah.
it dropped its activation. Something in
Yeah.
the servers must
Yeah.
not have been,
Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
Well, that's
but,
no fun.
Yeah.
That's no
So
fun.
wow, I'm laughing at me being me. So we went from podcast movement to thanking Arnie, and now I'm talking about the phone.
It's exciting to get a new phone.
It
Like,
was.
It's an exciting thing.
And I got an Apple Watch as well. So that's
welcome.
I've been on a roll lately. It's just like I had plastic in my back pocket that was just like, don't you love me anymore, man?
Did you put the watch on payments,
No,
or
it's
did you?
it's
you paid it?
the whole Verizon thing. You just rent this stuff is
Yeah,
basically what it
yeah,
amounts to.
basically, yeah. Sprint. I'm on Sprint, and they do the same thing.
Yeah.
I found the Apple Watch really, really useful on listening to podcasts. So,
Yes.
right, you can do things. So I'm in the car or whatever, and I'm listening, or I'm in the gym or whatever, and you can do the things like fast forward or skip ahead or stop right from the watch, which is super helpful.
Yeah, my favorite thing is I was out biking Wednesday night and I'm listening along and I have my phone in my pocket. I don't have the wireless earbuds yet. I should just burn more plastic doing that. But anyway, I'm doing that and I forget what show I was listening to and I'm like, oh, all right, time to fast forward to an ad. And I just pulled up my watch and fast forwarded right there. I'm like, all right, that's worth the money right there. So it was very cool. And there's a lot of cool health stuff in it. I was mad because my Fitbit lost my account. Like it's been a week. It's been 9 days since I finally called them and they're like, that's odd. When we type in your email address, you're not in the system. And by not communicating to me that they just said, oh yeah, well, we'll escalate this. And then they just never, said, hey, we're still working on it. Don't worry about it. We're so sorry. Nothing. And so when I was in the Apple store and this guy who was a diehard Android guy was like, oh man, Apple Watches are like the best.
That's
and I'm
pretty
like,
great.
wait, yeah. So
Game changers when you take your first phone call on it. That is super cool. Cause we grew up with Dick Tracy, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, it starts vibrating, and you look and a phone call's coming in and you recognize the person and you're like, okay, hello, and you can hear them and you can talk to them and it's pretty great. And so for me, that's a game changer, not to have to pull my phone out in those kinds of scenarios, especially for quick calls. Although we do very little, like that would be way faster for somebody to just call me, but then I get text messages on the watch, which is not as great. I mean, it's okay. You can do it, but not as great.
This is not you could do this with a regular phone. You can go into somewhere in the phone settings and create pre-written text messages. So like every morning, my brother around 10:30 will text me. It's like, morning, brother. And I always text back, morning. And I realized I could now set it up to where on my watch, I could just choose the preset of morning and email him back in 2 seconds. So that'll be fun. Liquidity has a great point. Even when you go to Podcast Movement, you can just get free swag. Grab the first t-shirt. If you are a Libsyn customer, go to the Libsyn booth. That's where I'll be. In fact, I'll be there all week, except for my session. Does starting a podcast make you want to pee your pants? And I'll also be on I forget what I think originally we're going to call it Help Us Help You, but it's a panel with me and Mike Dell and Shannon from Podbean. And it's all about behind the scenes of a podcast support desk.
It's a great idea.
But Liquid brings that up, and that's a question we had from Paul Padmore. Is that the same guy? Nope, different Paul. Hey, what are good giveaways you can recommend to entice listeners? And here's Jim, just for the record, we'll peel back the curtain for a second. It's 11:05. I'm putting 11:05 in the Trello thing.
Nice.
So later when I do the show notes, I will know that we did this 45 or 35 minutes into the show. So how would you figure out what swag?
Well, I think it kind of depends on your genre and what you're doing and what your audience is expecting. I would look to the industry to say, well, okay, what kind of things do they give away? So, what's important to them? Is it little trinkets? Is it stickers? For a while, stickers were a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. Could it be little keychains? Could it be,
USB
coasters,
drives.
right? Could it
Yeah.
be coasters? Yeah. Those kinds of things where, what do you think? And then I think just be original with it. I'm kind of an anti-swag guy now. I have so much junk like from conferences and those kinds of things. I really am. I don't want, when I go to a booth, personally, like when you said Lipson t-shirts for customers, I did have a little thought, like maybe I'll be a customer for a month, but they have a $5 plan, right? It's a $5 t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a deal.
It's a good point.
Yeah, there you go. Sign up SOP free and do I get an extra month for free if I use SOP free? Is that right? For Lipson?
SOP free. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Come on, I'm trying to pimp you, and you're like,
well, there you go.
like,
And now's the best time because you'll actually get this month free, and September free,
and next month free. Yeah, you want to do that for sure. But yeah, no, I don't, Dave. I'm kind of, for me personally, but there's listen. Harry Durant has had a huge success with t-shirts. That's not a cheap. And what do you think? He bring 200, 300 of those things to
probably.
And
the best I've ever bought t-shirts, and we had to buy 144 of them, was $6. So that's $700 ish and that was back when I was in a band. So Daniel's talking about, I don't know about Mighty Deals. I have a thing through TeePublic. If you go to podcastclothes.com, that's always a good name when you have to over pronunciate it. Podcastclothes.com. I don't know about Mighty Deals. I'll have to check that out. But
so inexpensive ways to do that. I like coasters. Those aren't bad. I've got a couple on my desk.
Yeah, stickers are fun. I'm still a big sticker fan. If I were to hold up my iPad here, I have stickers all over my case. So I think the thing that doesn't work anymore, Jim's holding up his laptop. It is just a smattering of
So that's the most important one right there. There we go.
I think the one that instantly in my brain I go, okay, I'll be throwing that away later, is the plastic or the rubber whatever wristband. I don't think wristbands. I think those were cool around the days of Armstrong, the bike guy. I want to say Neil, but that's the moon guy. Lance Armstrong. And I think that fad is come and gone. I'm trying to think what else. Here's the thing
those were real popular for a while.
Yeah. Here's the thing that drives me nuts. And I would love your opinion on this. When somebody hands me a business card that is not shaped like a business card, like it's it's one of those that's like supposed to be like put it on your key ring or something like that, or it's the size of a Kindle, or the size of a Netflix. It's like, yeah, here's my business card, and you're like, wait, what am I? That's not going to fit in my pocket. So to me,
a Netflix mailer?
That is a Netflix mailer.
Dave Jackson.
I did. It's a free month. I was like, all right, let's investigate that. Yeah. For me, make a business card that looks like a business card. So
well, you know why they do that, right? Because it's to stand out, right?
To stand out, and it stands out.
There's a whole bunch of marketers for the longest time who are like, "Hey, if you make it a different shape or a different thickness or whatever, when people are flipping through their cards, it'll drop out onto the floor, and then everybody will step on it." That was the marketing spiel.
Yeah,
it's not what they said, but
I remember you I remember you all the way to the trash can, and then I'm like, all right. So
there's some unique ones that look good.
Yeah.
The other side of that is you'll remember it. Like that's what you're supposed to. It's supposed to be a memory thing,
right?
Obviously, not working for you.
Not working for me. Hey, if you are in the chat room and you have a question, as we do this every Saturday, it's always askthepodcastcoach.com/join. We would love to answer your question live.
I think at Podcast Movement this year, are you gonna change gears?
No, go right ahead.
I think at Podcast Movement this year, I'm going to use on LinkedIn. There's an app that, and this is how I kind of prefer to connect with folks now is on LinkedIn. Just a nicer place to be, I think. But if you go into the LinkedIn app, this is kind of cool. In the up in the top, if you go to click your home page, let's see, go to I should know this. I have to find this every time. There's a setting where you can say, turn my phone on, and anybody else who has the app and has that turned on, you can connect to them. It'll just connect. It's like a near field connection. I always have to remember. Hold on. Let me see if I can find
Sounds like a total hookup app.
kind of is. But if you're in a room, so like I do this when I speak from time to time. I'm like, hey, let's all connect on LinkedIn. So go to the app, do this. I always know, like not like right now, because I'm just thinking of this now, but I always know how to get there. I'll figure this out here in just a second when you're talking. But go there and let's connect right now. And that gives, they don't have to, but it's a super easy way to connect with people on LinkedIn. And it's like in a room size. So I could have a room, Dave, you could do that during your session. Hey, if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I've got my connection thing turned on, and I'd love to, go here in the app and get that done. I've done that for some business meetings that we've had, like for business professionals where I want to connect with them, and I'll get 40 or 50 to connect in a day, which is great. So it's another great way to use technology. Let me figure out where that is as you keep talking.
Well, what I need to also remember, I need to get this in my brain. If somebody goes, well, where can I find your podcast? I need to be able to say, oh, just go to schoolofpodcasting.com, or you can just text SOP to 31996. I never say that. I need to have that in my brain. Oh, just text SOP to 31996 because I forget that a lot. But yeah, so anything you can do to connect, he's found it.
I did find it. So if you go to your people, if you go to the people section, so you're on the LinkedIn app, there's a little people right at the very top. It says find nearby up in the middle there. You can't see it because of the lights, but it says find nearby. It's off by default. Thank you, LinkedIn. That's the right response. Yeah. You don't want to have that on. As soon as I click on it, it will say share my nearby status, and you can turn that on, and everybody who's turned that on in the area will start appearing there, and you can choose to connect with them that way. It's a super easy way to get that done. So someone had said in chat, the app, Christopher said, the PM app will let you connect with each other. Yeah, but I never use the Podcast Movement app after the show. In LinkedIn, you have a little better chance of connecting with people that way if you want to do that. So that's just another option. I have almost 5,000 connections on LinkedIn now, and it's super helpful for what I do.
And that is something to kind of slightly revisit the old thing we're talking about. If there is somebody you really want to meet at Podcast Movement, contact them ahead of time and set something up, because I know there have been times when Steve Lee from International Podcast Day last year, I saw him in the hallway for like 2 seconds, and I'm like, dude, we'll have to connect later. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And that was the only time I saw Steve. That was it. Mm-hmm. So if there's somebody you really want to meet, you mentioned earlier about doing podcasts at Podcast Movement. So you're kind of like, is it? See, I'm with you on that. And here's why. I think it's a great place to connect, make that connection and say, I would love to have you on the show, get the contact info and set that up. Yeah. Because I have to watch how you say that, because if somebody interviews you, you are in a one in a lifetime chance. This happens once a year, and you've now missed 90 minutes of it. Mm-hmm. And to me, I'm like, don't miss the once in a lifetime or once a year thing to do something you can do anytime. Now, granted, you can only do it face to face at this point, but to me, I'm like, because I've heard other people say like, wow, I just got hijacked. I thought it was going to be cool, but it took us 2 hours. And, so be careful with that. You don't want to like drag people out of.
I think that ship sailed a little bit too on, broadcasting live from events was really cool when it was first, we could do all these things. And now you're kind of like, there are certainly circumstances and situations where it makes sense, but I think anymore people are kind of like, well, okay, that's okay. I mean, that's like, so say you and I did a live Ask the Podcast Coach from Podcast Movement. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's that much different. Now we could do some different spins or have somebody we normally wouldn't get, but it's so easy to get those people anyways, any Saturday we wanted them. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't see the payoff. I would rather spend my time. That's a lot of time in prep, in getting ready and getting set up, in advertising and going live and edit it and post-production. I just don't know if it's worth it right now.
Aliquity has a great thing. You could do this on your phone. I have people fill out an interview form at the conference, which takes 5 minutes on Google Forms. I have their contact info and when I can get back. Perfect. There are some great things you can do. Like you just mentioned, the LinkedIn thing.
I'd use LinkedIn.
If you have MailChimp, I believe MailChimp has a thing. So if somebody says, and you're talking about a newsletter or whatever, you can say, oh, you can sign up for it right here if you want. If that's the route you want to go. Can we shift gears?
Yeah, totally.
Maybe I have a great point. Banks brings us up in the chat room. How many hundreds of dollars do I have to spend on a mic to make my $15 voice sound like a $50 voice? So far, the more I spend, the more my voice sounds like $15. But here's the thing. I'm going to put a link in the chat room. And that is to a picture of Tim Ferris, who just went over 4 million downloads. I think it was at 40 million. It's a lot of millions because, well, he's, Tim Ferris, and he has a picture of his quote studio. Because I see a lot of people now like putting up audio proofing and they're, this and that, and they're buying insane amounts of this and that. Tim Ferris records his insanely popular podcast in his kitchen with a 2100 and a pop filter. And I was like, holy cow, that was pretty amazing for that. Yeah, you will find this at askthepodcastcoach.com/262 is where the links for today. So
sweet looking kitchen.
Yeah. Well, it's Tim Ferris. He's all about cooking too. Didn't he have like a whole chef thing he was trying to do? Yeah,
it looks like he's doing it from the bar, the island.
Yes,
in his kitchen.
The kitchen island.
Yeah.
So
it's super great. Yeah, you can. I think to a point, right? Your audio needs to be good to a point, but if you've got a following and if people like you, it's really what it comes down to. You got to be a likable kind of guy, so people actually like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to listen no matter what you say. Like I don't like Gary. So I don't listen to Gary Vaynerchuk because I don't like him. But that's my personal thing. Plenty of people really love his stuff. And so he's super popular.
Gary is an acquired taste. I pop in and out of Gary.
Oh, it's so painful.
But there's only so much I can hear him talk about hustle before I just go, yeah, okay, I get it.
Well, but does he set up his videos so that it looks like he just spent a minute setting them up? And like he's running in between super important meetings where he's a big deal, but his shirt's unbuttoned and his hair's all kind of messed up. And then he's like, okay, I literally I had something I had to say and I'm just saying it right now. And like, is that staged? Do hours of production go into that look?
Well, the new prime minister of England, there was a thing on HBO.
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson, thank you. And he pointed out how like there are people like, look, his hair was fine. And then he's getting ready to go on the BBC and he purposely musses up his hair so he looks like that lovable goofball, good old BOJO.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? So
I hadn't heard that with BOJO. That's a good one. Yeah. Well, it's an image thing, right? And so, he wants to have that kind of image thing kind of going on. And so, okay, I didn't mean to get negative on that one. That Gary sends me off. It's like, so I go off, like when you go off on Anchor, I that's my thing. That's my anchor. Don't do it, Dave.
I've listened to Tim Ferriss. I listened to his interview of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a couple other, but I've read his stuff and I'm always kind of like, all right, I think I read part of the 4-Hour Work Week and it just seemed like I love when people with teams give me directions on how their team helps them out to do something super easy and completely ignore the fact that I don't have a team. And I know the answer is, well, then go get a team. And I'm like, I get that, but there's never like, oh, and if you don't have a team, here's how you start a team, or here's what you could do, or things like that. So
I have both, Dave. I have both a team at work who's very, very helpful. And then Home Gadget Geeks, Cyber Frontiers. That's all me. There's no team, there's no I in that thing. Oh, it's only an I. So I always say there's no I in team, but there is one in win. So I have seen both sides of the fence and live on both sides of the fence today. Yeah. And there's some great things about having a team, and there's some hard things about having a team.
Yeah, when you start making decisions based on committee, that gets real old real quick.
Hey, who is also a great team? and I think we're going to miss it.
No, actually, I did this on purpose because
good.
This is the last or the first week of the month. And I was like, you know what we're going to do different this month is we're going to do this at the end, right? Because we were breaking it up.
Okay, good.
And I was like, hey, you know what? Let's just wait to do that at the end.
I wanted to be a good co-host and make sure we don't
miss it. So yeah, he's talking about our awesome supporters. And so we are talking about awesome people like Greg at depthshepherd.com, Glenn the Geek at, I still don't know if he's going to Podcast Movement, horseradionetwork.com. Glenn is over in jolly old England right now. I was looking at his Facebook. Josh Rivers, who's getting ready to do a new season of podcasting experiments where he's going to be focusing on geographic. Like I just said, I said, dude, you got to talk to the Holyfields from I Am Salt Lake. So he's got that season coming up. Max Trescott over at aviationnewstalk.com. We might talk about my flight. I took a flight last night that was different in the post show. Shane from spybrary.com, Carrie Bond from keywestperspective.com. That's a show, oddly enough, about Key West. Who would have thought? My buddy Ronsley over at Amplify Media Group, find him at mustamplify.com. Carl White does the Life in the Carolinas podcast. Find him at lifeinthecarolinaspodcast.com. Kim Krajci from Toastmasters101.net. And we want to thank our awesome $10 supporters. This is Jeffrey Hallish from Podnuts. That's Podnutz. Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com. Michael Delaney at babymountainradio.com. He does the show Caregivers for Dementia. Nick Suberling, Subes, at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Sean Park at BeYourOwnNerd.com. Barry Kessler at BarryKessler.com. Jay Cleveland Payne at MoreBetterMedia.com. Our $5 supporters are Corey Finneran at IvyEnvy.com, Chris Holofield, speaking of him, IamSaltLake.com, Ed Ryan from Podcasting for Dummies, Eric Hunley at Unstructured Pod. He's also got a new show. It's about words that are, I just did it on the Podcast Rodeo show. And I told him this is half the problem. There's a word for when you like BOJO, that's a thing. And I can't remember what that word is. It's like Trumpow. It's like the Trump hour. But anyway, he's got a new show out. So Eric, thanks for being a supporter. Illiquity, who just got back, speaking of traveling in Europe, find her at travelglutenfree.me. Jason Bryant, who's listening on an airplane today, matttalkonline.com. Jason from CUATX.com. Jeremy Dennis at transmissionspodcast.com. Some guy named Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv. Joel Solsihai at stackingbenjamins.com. Kim Slusher at distractedlifepodcast.com. And I can't find my mouse. There we go. Rob Griffiths at bedtime.fm. Master Cauldron at cauldronscrypt.com. Rob Griffiths at bedtime. I think I've already hit. I think Rob got a twofer here. Bedtime.fm/storytime. Troy Heinrichs at blacklistexposed.com. Troy Price at frontporchstudios.com. Kyle Bondel at gagglepod. The coolest last name ever. Matthew at scottishpodcast.com. Michael Ray, Ross Brand over at livestreamuniverse.com, and our awesome $1 supporters, including Alan Palmer, Adam Higgins at oddadoutpodcast.com, Anthony Arno at Route 66 Podcast, that's 66podcast.com, the Audio Dice Network at audiodice.net, Barb at anchor.fm/BarbTUSA, Brandon at seahawkerspodcast.com, David Wilson at Ottawa Works, Dan at basedonatruestorypodcast.com, Dave at the soccersidelines.com. He's a new supporter. Emily Prokop at the storybehindpodcast.com. Garrett at utrmedia.org. Bumble at maskme.org. That's masqme.org. Gary and Margaret at beekeepingpodcast.com. Craig at ingleuspodcast.com. Chris and Brandon at Florida Focus Podcast. That's a college football podcast. International Latin Podcast Awards at latinpodcastawards.com. James H. Carter II at creepykingdom.com. Jeff at Disney Coast to Coast. Now, Disney's cool. It's spelled with a Z, so disneycoasttocoast.com. Jason at TV times 3. That is THREE.com. Jay Poole at Post. Why do I always mess this one up? I always want to say pot. It's Potstir, not Post Stir. Potstirpodcast.com. John at soberspeak.com. Lucas at triangletactical.net. Josh Liston at onthebubblepodcast.com. Mark from The Resourceful Designer, find him at resourcefuldesigner.com. Mike Moody at CreatePod, a podcast about the art of podcasting, find him at createpodatx.com. Patrick Keller at bigseancepodcast.com. Paul at fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Remind me to come back to Paul later. Randall Black at randallblack.com. Ryle Davis Jr., Steve Sleeper at earn.show, Sean Perrin at claraneat.com, Wayne Henderson at mediavoiceovers.com, Cody Sison, and Zachary Webb at seriousobouttech.com. So if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, thank you to all of them, by the way. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and look at your inbox today, because I'll be sending out the time when we will be doing our awesome meetup that we'll be doing later on in the month. So thanks to all those people for supporting the show. So
don't forget Paul.
Paul.
You said you needed to come back.
Oh,
to Paul.
Yeah. Paul does a show about World War II, and he had sent me a voicemail. I just realized I didn't put it in today, about how do you go, like, are there agencies to help you find sponsors? And there are. If you go out to podcastingresources.com, he said, praying that it's still up. I think I have all my issues fixed. Podcastingresources.com. Yes. Okay, good. I had a issue with malware on that site, but I've since cleaned it up.
Good.
And it's good. And it has been up for weeks now, which is good. But there are ad agencies you can do that. That's going to be an interesting one, because it's a World War II podcast. So I like, nothing pops out of my head of what product fits in except World War II. See, on one hand, I go, World War II people are probably 60, but on the other hand, right now, Emily, oh my God. She works for Libsyn. She's our community manager. She has black hair. She's got a really, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name.
But just keep going. It'll
anyway, Elsie Escobar, right now is all into World War II. So it's not just older people that grew up with it. It's history people love that. So I don't know if there's a history product or a history website that's a membership site that has an affiliate program, or, I'm not sure. That's one that doesn't sound super easy to
I didn't know. I bet there's some groups out there. I bet there are some big groups out there around that you just need to get into, provide some value into, be a member of them, do some things. I don't think that shouldn't be that difficult. I would think monetizing it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends what the value is.
Yeah. So, and
people
then
buy things they can't live without, like iWatches.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly. I needed this, man.
A watch. Yeah. Apple Watch. There we go.
And then I don't know if you want to read this. Some guy put this thing in the chat room. I don't know if you want to read this.
Yeah, I got some openings in September. I've never done this to this audience, but as you were going through the supporters, one, I was like, wow, that's an awesome list. And then two, my favorite people to interview are podcasters, because I don't have to do any work to set them up. Right.
Oh, man.
Home Gadget Geeks, we're always looking for guests who want to come in and have some kind of interesting thing to talk about a gadget, and the weirder the gadget, the better. In some regards, I do like last week, we talked about ham radio. I mean, I haven't talked about ham radio in 25 years, and it's back. Like, it's super popular right now. I didn't know. My co-host got into it. So if you got something interesting, a gadget or something technology-wise you want to talk about, love to have you on the show. I can support you in that way by helping you get your show out to my audience. If you want to do that, just let me know. Jim@theaverageguy.tv.
There you go. And
didn't mean to make that a huge commercial, Dave. So
no, that's by all means. And while we're doing it, the question of the month this month at the School of Podcasting, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/question, is what was the last thing that wasn't yours that you shared online via whatever social, we don't care. What was the last thing you shared that wasn't yours? And the important thing was why? Why did you share that clip? So if you want to chime in on that, I need it by August 23rd. Just go to schoolofpodcasting.com/questions. So, but today in the post show, like I say, I've been spending money like I have some, which is always kind of fun. And I will be spotlighting a new toy called the Tascam DRX 10X, which is going to be, I will have it at Podcast Movement. It's a handy little tool, and I'll explain what that is when we get to the post show. On this week at the School of Podcasting, I'm interviewing Kristen Meisner, who is the author of the book So You Want to Start a Podcast. Really good interview. Jim, in 28 seconds or less, what's coming up on theaverageguy.tv?
I already pimped it. Ham radio.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Head out to theaverageguy.tv.
So chat room, thanks for sticking around. Stick around for some more. We got some post show, and like I said, we'll be talking a little fun gears. So stick around for some post show.